From teacher to coach, and why you would never want to be a teacher. Here is a great exercise that I would encourage you to try with your teachers or as a teacher. If I were to ask you to define a teacher, what would you say? Teachers teach a curriculum. Teachers follow an outline of what needs to be taught. Teachers hand out these standardized tests to measure the performance of an entire group. And then if you would define a coach, well, coaches help build on your strengths. Coaches focus on the individual and will deviate from the norm if they find a better approach to your learning. Coaches, they take an interest in you and your personal goals. So why in the world would anyone want a teacher? I didn't know the difference between a teacher and a coach until I experienced it really firsthand. Going back to when I was 8 years old, I took my very first guitar lesson. I was handed a Mel Bay book and had to learn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I don't know about you, but I've never met a kid who was inspired to learn to play a musical instrument after hearing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. After 2 weeks, I quit. Fast forward to 13-year-old me, and this guitar teacher comes to my home, places a timer on my desk, and then starts teaching me how to play the songs that he performs in church. And, well, guess that I quit after 3 weeks. And then at age 15, I took my last chance at learning to play guitar. I got to my new guitar teacher's house. He had long blonde hair, looked like Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player, Randy Rhoads. And he asked me what I wanted to learn, not what he wanted to teach me. And it was that day I was bitten by that proverbial bug. I didn't realize it then, but did years later, that as I began to offer guitar lessons, you gotta focus on the student. As I started my music coaching career, I only taught what the students wanted to learn. And over time, I found a way to manipulate, strategically guide the student by weaving music theory into the lesson, making the process fun, engaging, and exciting. My refined strategy developed over time worked perfectly, time and time again, so much that I became one of Brooklyn, New York's most popular, in-demand guitar coaches, I guess you could say. And well, then I had a parent say to me one time, and they approached me and they said, well, I'm doing it all wrong. I needed to teach reading and incorporate jazz standards. Well, I had been teaching this boy for 6 months, and while he was amazing at writing and recording music, he had no passion for learning how to read. And this was a defining moment in my career. His father, a local pastor in a church, demanded that I teach his son what he, the pastor, wanted him to learn. I said politely, sir, you do your preaching and I'll do my teaching. And if you don't like the way I teach, perhaps you should just find another music teacher for your son. Well, I won that war, and years later, that student became an incredible engineer, a music producer, a composer of original songs for his father's church. Years later, a friend of mine was at dinner with this pastor and his wife, and their son came up in conversation, as did his son's successes, and the wife turned to her husband, the pastor, and said, you see, that Mike Grande was right. In 1999, I left Brooklyn and I moved to Staten Island. I had a full-time job in New York City as an IT guy, and I really missed teaching. I should say coaching. So I went to a local music school, and it was hard to teach part-time. They asked me to use their Mel Bay books and encouraged me to sell them to the students. And I told them, I don't teach, I'm a coach. And I asked if I could, coach the way I've been doing for years. And he said, okay. So I brought in my computer and all these backing tracks, and I taught these kids to play music, and they loved it. I integrated music theory while they were learning, and in 3 months, I was the most popular teacher at this music school. And then the owner decided not to pay me one day because he was struggling with some money problems, so I quit and I opened up my own music school, and that was 19 years ago. And in 2022, I'm proud to say I've never hired a teacher, only coaches. Well, every year in November, I put on a concert to help raise money to feed families for Thanksgiving. And I'm a firm believer in giving back to your community. At the end of the show, we tally up all the money funds raised, and I ask the parents to have their children help hand out turkey baskets. It's a big difference between handing somebody a $10 bill and handing a turkey basket to those less fortunate. The following Sunday, we handed out the turkeys and the students came, and a student's mom came up to me and wrapped her arms around me and said, "Thank you." Watching my daughter perform on stage with all that confidence and self-esteem made me and my husband cry. My daughter doesn't have many friends at all, and she's always keeping to herself. We had no idea that music could transform a child the way it did my daughter. I said, yes, it was the music and her coach that helped her find her voice. How do we create a coach? Well, you first start with rapport. I would argue that you cannot connect with a student unless you make eye contact at their level. You must make your student feel comfortable learning from you. Find what they're interested in. Teach them what they want to learn, not what you want to teach. Then you can work in the music theory and all that other stuff in relationship to what they're learning, but that's the juice that gets them to want to do it. I've created a number of tools to help transition a teacher to a coach, and it all starts with whether or not the teacher is ready for the transition. Listen, the beauty of music education is that it's primarily privately owned music schools and contractors. We can make a difference. We don't have any red tape stopping us from becoming a coach right now. No bureaucracy in the public school system. Imagine the outcome of our children's future if we provide each child with a coach and not a teacher. Someone who can tap into their potential. Imagine a generation of children growing up with the ability to reach their full potential. I often wonder how many children we as a culture have failed because of the lack of inspiration that we have offered them on their journey. And my definition of a teacher versus a coach, teachers focus on teaching, coaches, they focus on the student. And which one do you want to be?